So our first one is just a simple, this 2020 Chargers. Now, there's actually a couple different ways we can kind of get the look we have here. So just to build this design, we have a couple different things. We have, our stars, we have our 2020, our basketball. And you can see how the basketball text we have here, it's a little bit more spaced out. So that's where, that's going to be using that text spacing tool. Now to get this split right across, again, that will be our split tool. And then we can also use a power clip too. So we'll go over both of those features. So the first thing we did was just grab these boxes here, and we're just going to draw a couple, or we're just going to draw one kind of rectangle shape. And if it helps, you can add color to it right away. Now to get that slant that we have here, we're just going to double click our rectangle box. And you'll notice when you have it selected once, you'll just see the black boxes around the outside. If we click on that rectangle again, that's when we'll see the arrows around the outside. And we're just going to kind of slant that to the right just like that. So once we have that completed, we're going to make a copy. So this is actually on the edit tab. You actually have a copy selected. So you can definitely use that. We can hit the down arrow. It's going to make a copy for us. And then once I have it copied, I'm just going to drag it down. And I'm going to hold shift as I do that. And that's going to keep it straight in line. So some of the mistakes with this is if you hold shift first and then try to do it, it sometimes doesn't work as well. But if you just kind of grab it and then hold shift, it puts it right on that same line. Alright, so the next part we have our Chargers text. So we can kind of use this, we can do this feature in a couple different ways. One is setting it up with the split feature. So have you guys used the split feature before? Okay, so no. Alright. So this is a nice little feature that we have here that's just gonna, what it's gonna do, it's gonna grab whatever object, and you don't have to use it just for like a text. You can actually use this like if you had your star shape here too. Oh, I grabbed the whole thing. But if you had just a basic shape, it'll split it for you. So it doesn't have to be text, but it works really well, like to give you a look like the Chargers text that we have here. So one way is, let's just go to our text effects real quick and just grab a text box from there, and then we'll go back to our edit tab. All right, so when we have this set up, we'll write Chargers, and we'll go ahead and change the font in here too. So it looks just like that. All right. So with this split feature, if we highlight over it, and this goes with most of the tools we use or have on the software, if you look at the bottom left down here underneath the phone number, it'll kind of give you an idea of what this button does. So if you left click, it does a vertical split. If you right click, it does a horizontal split. So with our Chargers text here, if we left click it, what that's going to do is split your design right down the middle, doing a vertical split. Now, what this feature also does for us that's pretty cool is it gives us like a slight overlap. So if I double click on the blue here, you can see how it actually goes underneath the yellow to give us just a slight overlap, and that helps lining it up when we go to press it. So, and sometimes if we were to line it up straight where they were like where the blue ended, where the yellow started, that ends up like giving us little problems like this when we go ahead and press it. If we're off at all, that's when we see like the white of the t-shirt coming through and stuff like that. So not only is it going to do a split right in half, but it also gives us a nice overlap of our design. All right. So the one thing that this button does is it finds the middle point and splits it right in half. So with our, with our design here, it took the farthest point of this side, so our left side where the C ends, and our right side where the S ends, and it just does a split right down the middle. So same thing, if we do a right click, it'll do a horizontal split with us, but it would select, it's going to find the middle by the top point and then the bottom point of our text. So I'm going to do a right click, and we can see now that it's going to give us that horizontal split just like that. And again, if I click onto the yellow, you can see how it just slightly does an overlap, and that's just, again, to make sure like our t-shirt doesn't show through. So there is a custom click. Now, unfortunately, with the custom click, you can only do like a straight line, a horizontal or vertical straight line. So it won't work with like a diagonal line. So if we want let's bring this back together. And let's say we want a split going across our design this way, right? So with that, if we want like a split going across this way, what we'd actually have to do is select our design, and up top I like to do a rotation up here, so maybe start with like 10 degrees, and that looks pretty good there. And the reason I like to do degrees up top instead of just selecting your text and kind of doing a rotation like this is because a lot of times if you look at our degrees rotate, like the degrees we rotated, it's 9.356. So to get my design back to normal like this, I would have to rotate it the opposite way, 9.356. And I don't want to have to remember like a number like that. So instead, I would just make this an even 10. And then that way, when I'm done, I just have to go type in -10, and it'll bring it back to being like flat. So now I'm going to go ahead and right click my split feature. And again, the way it works is it's going to find the highest and lowest point of our design. So if we have our design here, if I add my guidelines, let's get rid of this here. My highest point is up top here on the S, and my lowest point is on the C. So that middle point would be this line here. Okay, so that's kind of where we're gonna get our line, but instead it should be going probably the opposite. No, it'll look like that. So that's kind of where this, on this side of the line here, that's going to be one color, and then up top would be another. So now, let's go ahead and make this a 2-color. So it would look just like that. So all I would do is once I had that split, since I typed in 10 up top, now I'm going to type in -10, and that's just going to bring it right back to being even this way. So if we want more of like a diagonal split, we just have to rotate our design first, then hit the split feature, and then rotate it back. So any questions on that part? Does that make sense? Alright, so with our design here, do you guys like the straight row this way, or do you kind of like it with more of like a diagonal look like that? Straight. All right. So we got a little bit, pretty much 50-50. So we'll leave this one straight, but we'll keep this one diagonal just because it's, you know, pretty much made there. So now the next way that we could work with the design this way is what we call a power clip. So we've done a couple webinars with power clipping, but we haven't got too much into it. Now, power clipping can work in different ways. You can power clip like an image, like a PNG or JPEG into a design. If that's the way, if that's the object or like file type that you're going to power clip inside of it, we couldn't be using like vinyl as our finished product. If we power clipped an image, it would mean that we're most likely using some type of direct to garment or like a VersaCam, something that we would print rather than like a vinyl. So has anyone power clipped before? All right, so let's grab another text. So the cool thing about a power clip is right now, the way we have this design set up, so there's advantages and disadvantages to a power clip. So one of the advantages is right now when you use that split feature in a design, it's not a live text anymore. So I cannot go back and change this word Chargers into, you know, Buccaneers or, you know, Mustangs, anything like that. I would have to retype the word, add the split feature again, and then, you know, manually edit that. A power clip we could actually set up inside of live text. So this text right here is still considered like a live text. We can go in and edit it like I am now. So if I type Chargers, and again we'll use a different font here. So what a power clip is again, you can use, most of the time if we want to use like a vinyl product as like the end product, we would have to make sure whatever we're power clipping inside our text or, you know, a design would be a vectorized object. So in this case, what I could do is grab a rectangle tool, draw out a rectangle just like that. Let me go ahead and get rid of these guidelines that I made. And I could make this rectangle, you know, any color I wanted. So I'll make it this gold here. Make it a little bit wider. So this object here is just a simple vector. So I'm going to right click, and up top you'll see power clip inside. So when I select this here, if I click on Chargers now, it's going to put that box inside my text. Now, the way it's set up is because it wasn't like overlapping the design already, is that it's going to center it to the word Chargers. And that's okay because we're going to go ahead and edit that anyways. But that's why it's like right in the middle of the text like that. But when I hover over this and bring my cursor down just a little bit, you can see this like bar come up a little bit like more. So you can comes a little bit more visible. So on the left hand side, this is our edit power clip button. So now I can select our edit power clip, and it will show you this like blue outline of the text or object you have your power clipping to. But now I have complete control over this bar. So I can bring it down this way and hit OK, and now it gives me that 2-color look. Now if I change the color, it's only going to change that top part. If I wanted to, though, I could select this here and make that like red now, and it would change the color that way. But if you select it and try to change the color, it would just change that top piece, because that's the part that's not covered with the power clip. All right, so what's cool is now I can select this here, rotate it however I want through my design, hit OK. and now it's that diagonal one. So again, this is still a live text, so you see the word charges here. If I change this to Seminoles now, it's actually going to hold that power clip inside the text and will change with it. Right? So it is a nice little feature to have, but the only issue with this is now is when we use that split feature, remember it gives us that overlapping piece, and that helps us like make sure the t-shirt doesn't show through when it's not supposed to, stuff like that. So if we were to do a design with the power clip tool, on the edit tab we have this convert power clip to cuttable vector. So once I'm done with this power clip, once I have it set up, I have the right text, I can click this button right here. Try that again. That's weird. All right, one more time. All right, there we go. All right, so I just converted the object to an actual vector. So I right-clicked and hit convert to curve. So you can see how that's grayed out now. But I just converted that box to curve so it would read it as an object. But now it gives us our two pieces here. So we have the red one, but you can see the gold is still underneath it. So then you'd have to, you could use the knockout, or you could use the boundary feature. Yeah, someone asked what went wrong there. It just needed to be curves, converted to curves. So once I did that, it worked fine. And normally it doesn't have to. I don't know if there's just something wrong with like one of the letters or something like that, but usually you don't even have to convert it to curves. But once I did, it fixed it. Right. So yeah, there's a couple different ways you could get this like cut ready now. If you probably wouldn't want to layer this red right on top of the gold, we'd want to cut it out. So with that, we could do the trim feature. We could do the simplify. You could use the boundary tool on your live template editor. And with the boundary tool, that though, if we use that, it would create, a boundary between the two, which personally I would probably try to set up this way, because it would be really hard to line those up perfectly anyways. And this kind of gives us a oops, I just hit undo a couple times, so move that. So let's go ahead and make this boundary again 0.05, remove shapes. So I made it a little bit bigger so we could see it, but that would put a line right through it. And I personally would do that on purpose, just because, again, if you had your design just set up this way and you try to do a trim, it would line these up. So you had to like perfectly line those up when we pressed it. So those are kind of your two different ways that you're able to kind of set these up. So one, you can set it up as a live template with the power clip, or two, you just kind of type the text out, rotate it, or you can leave it flat like this, and then you use that split feature. But with the power clip too, what you're able to do is one second, guys. I don't know who's there. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm still doing the webinars at home and someone's like knocking at the door. Dogs are going crazy. So with the power clip too, you can also do like shapes like this. Go ahead and weld them all together. So if I had some stars, I could hit power clip, select the Seminole text, and those would stay in here too. And I could even make copies once I was in here. So you could have a design kind of set up that way too. So that's, you know, that's what's cool about the power clip. All right, so any other questions with the power clip? Yeah. Someone knocked and now there's a dog walking outside, so they're just going crazy at this point. Yeah, so we show you how to do the stars again, no problem. So with any like power clip, let me just get these out of there. Actually, let me just get back. Okay. So I just drew a couple stars out. I'll just make them all like this right now. And you don't have to weld them together. You could have all these different colors. But we'll go ahead and group these now. And when I select these, we're going to select the top again, power clip inside, select the text field, Seminoles, and that will just throw the stars right in there. Now, this has already been converted to a text, or to an object from a text. But if you had like a live text with that, you could type out any word and it would keep like the stars there. And then when you're ready, when you have that done, you just hit the power clip, convert power clip to cuttable vector, and then it just brings these right on top of your design, and it's ready to cut. Yes, so there's a question, did you right click to get to the power clip option? Yeah, so once you have your object selected, you right click and power clip inside will be that top option. And then it's going to just give you an arrow and you just click on the design that you want to send those to. All right, perfect. All right, so that's some of the features on the edit tab there. Another really popular one you'll see us use is the fill between two. Now the fill between two can be used with rhinestones or just different objects in general, like clip art, any shape. So a lot of times when we're designing, you might see us use like the star tool, and we'll draw one star here, bring it all the way across. Now I'm going to select both of those objects. You can do one at a time by holding shift, or you can just highlight both of them. But then we're going to click fill between two. So right now, all these stars are technically on a path, right? So what I'm able to do before, as long as I don't hit this clear path, I can select, if you select one of the outside ones, you'll see how it just selects those outside stars. If you select any of these in the middle or between those two outside ones, it will select all the stars on that path. Now, if you try to move one of these outside ones, it will actually move the path with it. But it still, as you can see, is all on just one path right now. So if you select any of those inside ones, it's going to select them all. And that's when we can go down to this up and down arrow key here. And if I hit down, it's going to take one star out of that path. But what's cool is that it keeps the same distance between all the stars now. So once we're done, once we have, once we're happy with the amount of stars that are in there, that's when we can highlight that section of stars and hit clear path. Now what that's going to do is release that from the path, so I cannot at this point add or minus any like stars to that path anymore. That's been broken, but I can select them as individuals now, so I could get maybe rid of those ones in there and just make all this the same color. So I have all those as one color, then I'll hold shift, select those ones there, and make it that color. All right, next part, we'll just add some text real quick. And we'll fit this for the 2020 up top. Now, with the basketball down here, you can do this two ways, but to get this look we have, that's going to be our text spacing button. So if you just write out a word, so I'll just write out basketball. And I use this font here. So if I try to stretch it across now, see how it gives us, like it doesn't look that good, especially like compared to the one above it. So even if I make that, you know, a little bit smaller, it's still, you know, it doesn't look good, right? So to keep that look where we're not stretching out all the letters, that's when we use the text spacing button. So, you know, once I like the height of my text here, you can, you know, we want to separate all the letters, so you can click this button here. That's gonna add space between each letter. The one next to it to the left will decrease space, so you can see how the arrows are going towards each other. These ones are going away. And then the two to the left or to the right of it, that's going to do the same thing but for vertical text. So you can see how this one, the arrows are going, you know, moving the spacing closer. This one's moving the space away. All right, now I don't really use these buttons unless I just want like just a little bit of a space between each one. If you actually click the button that says TS, it will give you these two like kind of drop downs underneath the text field. So this one on the left is for vertical text, and the one on the right is for horizontal. So I'm just going to select that, left click and hold, and I'm just going to drag it across just like that. All right, so that's going to hold my, you know, that's going to allow me to, you know, not stretch the letters, but go across, you know, the entire design like that. So again, if you're just building a design and not necessarily trying to make it like a live template or anything like that, you can kind of just do it just like we did there. Just type out the text, use the text spacing tool. Now, if you're trying to possibly make this like a live text or a live template, you can actually do the same thing here. And what I'm going to do, I'll just make this a little bit shorter like that, and go ahead and use the same font, and I'm gonna click this text spacing button. All right, so you can see it's not actually going outside wherever my boxes are here. It's not actually gonna go outside of that, but it will increase the distance between each letter. It's a little bit harder to see it this way, but now once I kind of have that set up, I can stretch it out a little bit more, adjust the height. And this one does look a little bit more stretched out just because it's 4 letters. But once we, you know, switch this to like basketball, it's going to look a lot better. And if I want, once I have it set up, I can even add more. But by doing it this way with a text that's like considered a live text. Yeah, basketball because baseball is not a sport. Correct, correct. So this one here, if we wanted to change it to a different sport like soccer, now I could select it and it would still hold the same spacing that it did. So that's why it's cool about like a live text. If you don't have it set up like that, you can see how it, it's only 6 characters now, so it matches with the 6 characters here. This, it doesn't matter what we put in there, it would always fit to those dimensions. And then the text up top, that could just be 2020. Match it just like that. And if needed, you can always like bring this down or bring this in a little bit. But that's what's cool about the live text part of it, is that you can also add that text spacing effect, but it will hold it for every whatever text you put in there. All right, so any questions on our first design? Or any questions on anything we covered? The power clipping, split, fill between, text spacing, anything like that? All right, cool. All right, so our next design, that's going to be our sunrise, sunburn, sunset, repeat design. And this is just something, this design here is what we call a knockout. So sometimes this gets like mixed up. Like we might say we're going to knock out the area around it. That's not like the knockout tool necessarily. That's just kind of saying we're kind of how we have this area around it knocked out. That's where the like confusion comes in. So we're more using the magic boundary tool to kind of get this separation here, but this look of the entire design is using the knockout button or feature. So let's bring up a new page here. Have you guys used the knockout feature before? Not the magic boundary, but the actual KO button here. Yes, love it. Yeah, so it's a cool tool. And we also, on the magic tab, have a similar button, but it actually adds stone around your object or your like clip art too. So first thing we want to do is just write out the text. And if it's easier, you can use the text effects and just create your text this way so it's like all the same. Actually, let's do that. So I'm just going to create 4 of these. And it's anytime you're adding or using the text effects tab, you always want to just kind of click off your design or your text that you have selected when you're clicking apply, and that'll make sure it adds a new one. If you have like an object shape or text field already selected and you hit apply, it's not going to add a new one. You have to make sure you click off, and then you're not, you don't have anything selected. Finally did, but I can't figure out how to weld different colors in order to print separate. All right, so we'll cover that too. So now I'm just going to grab all those and just kind of shrink it in a little bit, maybe on the sides. All right, so now if I hit show all, and this I'll show you guys this real quick too. If I hit find text right now without the show all selected, you can see how it only shows text once. And we want it to do that. That's on purpose. But in this, most of the time, if there's a word text or, the same word multiple times, it could be like a 3-color live text, or maybe like we're editing the same or multiple designs and want one to say like soccer, one to say basketball, that's when we'll hit this show all, or in this case, how we want to be able to change each one of these separately. If I hit show all or check this box and then hit find text, it's going to list all four for us. So now I can select the top one. You'll see the top one's highlighted here, and I can type sunrise. Next, sunburn, sunset, and I'm just hitting enter, and that's going to take you to the next line, and then repeat. And let's go ahead and we'll use this passion one. And it will do this with text sometimes, so I'm just going to bring each one of these down a little bit. Now, the next, not necessarily a rule, but you know what we would recommend is you want to use that text spacing tool to bring in all the letters. So you see how much like rooms between each letter that we have here compared to my design in here, like how close all these letters are. So we want to make sure our design that before we apply the knockout, that text behind it, those letters are, you know, really close. They don't have to be touching, but we want them close. So we can come here, text spacing, and we're just going to bring them. This time we're going to go to the inside because we want to move them all closer together. So you can see how they're, you know, almost touching. You can have them overlapping a little bit if you want, but they don't have to be. So again, we're just going to bring this in. Just like that. On that one there. All right, so now what we can do is, you know, and we don't have to decide this right now, but if we want to use like different colors, we can kind of lay that out now. So, you know, I could use all these different colors here, you know, something like that. All right, so they're all different colors, and at the end we might have it all, you know, like a 2-color design, 3-color. We might switch it around. We may make all these, you know, the same, and then, you know, this one a second color, something like that. But just to kind of give us the options to do whatever we want, we're going to set them up where they're all different colors. All right. Now, if you know for sure that you're going into this design and like this is all going to be a 1-color design, and then maybe the clip art you're overlapping it with is going to be like a second design or second color, you can definitely go ahead and weld all this right now. But if we want the, you know, if we want to be able to change these or have the option to have this different colors, just, you know, we always want to think about the production side of it. So this is going to be at least 4 different presses if we're using vinyl, and we haven't even got to the knockout color. So that might be a 5th color. So that's going to increase our productivity time compared to just pressing 2 colors. But, you know, this might look a lot better. So those are the kind of things we want to think about when we're, you know, designing like this. So with our design here, we have this one all welded together. These ones are all different colors at the moment. So we don't want to weld it because then it's just going to make it all one color. So instead we're going to group it. So we're going to highlight, Control G, and that just grouped this all together. Because one of the definite rules with the knockout is you can only have 2 objects selected. So essentially you have the object behind it, in which this case it's all the text, and then the object that we're going to lay on top of it would be the second object. So it can only read 2 objects. If it's grouped together, this is reading as 1. If it's not, it's reading as 4. So next, let's go to add artwork so we can add some of our artwork. Oh, I was messing around earlier, so it's actually still in the summer. So this is from our summer pack. I think this is volume 1, and this is like Surf Girl 1, and we'll just select her. Let me see if Surf Girl, they're different. Okay, so they look the same. Alright, I just didn't notice this cut before, but I guess it's like that on that one. Alright, so this would be, again, to use the knockout, we can only have 2 objects. So this, because we welded all this, this is one obviously, and this would be our second one. Alright. In this case, we have 4 different colors. Because we grouped them together, it's only reading these 4 as one object. So we're going to kind of place her on top and just kind of set her in wherever we want. And we might, like, you know, it's okay to have, you know, you can make a couple copies, and, you know, you might want to have one over here or one the opposite direction. So you can try all these different ways out, you know, maybe not as tall, stuff like that. So you might, you know, need or mess around with it a little just to get the best look. All right. But we'll go ahead and highlight our design, and we're pretty much selecting both of those objects. And I'm going to left click, and let's make a copy of this one real quick. I'm going to left click the KO button. And let's move this to about 0.04. Alright. So what that does is wherever my Surf Girl was highlighting over the text, it's going to make a copy of that in the, you know, just like it did here. So it's just going to, like, you know, it's only the portion that's overlapping the text. So you see how, like, the surfboard got cut off down here and her feet got cut off? That's because there was no text there. Now, if I wanted to keep everything, remember last time we did a left click? This time I'm going to do a right click. So if I right click it, all the pieces that aren't actually overlapping with text will show up now. So you can see like how our feet are hanging out compared to this one where they're not. So you can have, you have a left click, which is this top version, and then a right click, which is the bottom version here. Now what this will do is, even though it's the same color, it's actually 2 different pieces. So we don't, you know, probably want it to look this way. Most of the time what I do is just go back and weld those both together really quickly. And now it's just, you know, back to being one solid piece. But it will, the part that was overlapping, it will break it up into 2 pieces. One that was, you know, outside the text and one that was inside of it. But typically I'll just weld both of those together. All right. So again, with this one here, if I just make a copy. So if I left click the KO button, you can see because of like the P, it was by her feet, was here. It's not going to get any of that. So I might, you know, notice that and be like, well, if I just move her over a little bit this way and do the same thing, now I see a little bit more of her feet. But if you do it this way and right click, it doesn't matter because all that's outside of it would still show up. All right, so our design here, same thing. I'm going to do a left click. Any part that's hanging off won't work. And then a right click. and that would keep the feet here. So now, because we group this together, now I can come back and hit ungroup. And, let's say instead of 4 or 5 different colors, I want it to be, 3. So sunrise and sunset, I want to make the same color. I can now select both of those, maybe make it that green, and then I can just weld those together. And then these 2 colors here, weld those together, and then I take my surfer and maybe just, make that purple. We can, play around with the different colors. So that's how, like at that point, I know someone was asking earlier, you would just weld them all together at this point. So once you apply the knockout, you can ungroup everything, and you would just weld any of the colors or pieces that you wanted to together. And this number 4, we had someone ask, what is that for? That's the distance of your knockout around your design. So what I mean by that is when you have your design here, the bigger this number is, so let's make another copy. So if I make this like 0.15, you can see how big this knockout is. So that big gap between the black and the next color, that's your knockout distance. So that was, I tried to make that one really big so you could see it. And it doesn't always look as good when the bigger it is, usually it doesn't look as good. So now here we'll do the same one, but we'll make this one 0.06. So select those 2, left click, and you can see that distance around everything isn't as big as the one we had here. The summer clip art, we had a question, where is the summer clip art? That's going to be from our summer pack volume 1 and 2. Those are both full packs. There are a couple mini packs with the summer too, but they don't necessarily have all the clip art. So any questions here on our knockout design? All right, perfect. Yeah, so what I can do is with this design here, someone asked, will this be included in the webinar? So what I'll do is I'll give you, if you want, I can throw something like this in here too. I'll throw this one in here with making it a live text just so you can have like an example with the power clipping tool. But what I'll also do is I'll include this sunrise, sunburn, sunset, repeat design, but I'll give it to you both ways. So I'll have it one completed and then one this way, so you can kind of use this clip art too, to play around with it. And what I'll do is I'll throw a couple different clip arts in there too. So maybe just like a palm tree and just a couple beach themed clip art. And let me see. So yeah, so this, let me clear everything out real quick. Because the way we set this up, this will be a live template too. So what's cool about this is now, like we've had one before where we've done like baseball, want to change that one. Baseball repeat. So if you have any baseball clip art, you know, let's maybe change this to some different colors. Yeah, let's make this one like red. All right. So if we had something like this, again, we would just group it. Add artwork, clear that out. Let's go back to our clip art. This time I would search baseball. Select like our batter, you know, whatever position we want. I could throw that in there. And now again, this is all grouped, knockout, and then we have our design just like that. And now, once we have a design like that, just to customize it for like a certain team, that's when we can bring in, you know, Braden River Little League champions, something like that. Bring that here. And then maybe use the text spacing tool to bring that out a little bit that way. You know, let's just get rid of let's just do brain champions. That way we can make it a little bit bigger too. And that could go underneath it to customize it. So we had a question, how does that play out when you send it to the cutter? All right, so that's when we want to decide what like how many colors and stuff it's going to be. You know, that's the important part at this point. So let's move it to a new page and we'll go from here. So right now our design is 5 different colors. So if I were to ungroup this, selected my my templates tab, let's do current page, you know, magic separator, it would separate each part for you. So that would be, you know, with the sending it to the cutter, you would then just load the material for each one. So this would be, you know, a lighter blue, darker blue, red, and then, you know, whatever color you wanted here. Now, if you wanted baseball, 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 all one color, repeat one, and then, you know, let's say we had that like gray or white, that would make it 3 colors instead of 5. All right, so this one would be easier to line up too, because think like when we, you know, separate this one here, that's when you have to be careful. You know, the baseball, they separate like this, just so it's easier to see, but those are all going to kind of sit on top of each other. So it'd almost be like we're manually eyeing that. So we're going to press 1 and go up from there. But if you're off at all when you're doing this pressing, like if I'm off a little, maybe I go a little to the right on this one, that's going to throw off how this part fits in there. So that's one thing to think about too, is if each one of those is a third color or its own color, if you're off at all, it could, like, see how these are running into each other now, but they're all, you know, down here they're off, but up top they're not. So that's where you can get into some lining up issues. But again, it'd be hard to start with the baseball player as the first part because it's hard to tell on a shirt where that part would be with the rest of the design. So, I would try to do something closer to this because these are all lined up now for me. I would just put repeat right underneath it, and then that would fit in there really nicely. All right, so any other questions from today's webinar? All right, sounds good. Well, you guys have a great day. I will get these designs and recording up by tomorrow, so just you can check back. Um, you know, by Friday morning they'll be up for sure. But check back tomorrow, and those will all be listed in there. Now, the one thing I will do is I'm gonna change these fonts just to basic impact. That because everyone already has that installed, and that way I don't have to find that attach a font and make sure it's installed. Otherwise, it's probably gonna switch it to impact anyways. So if it looks just a little bit different, it's just gonna be slightly different text. So instead, it'll kind of look a little bit like, instead of Passion 1, it will be Impact, but they won't be overlapping or anything like that. So if you want to change the font, that's fine when you go into it. Just keep in mind when you're working with a knockout, you want to use a bolder, thicker font like we have here. So this is called Luckiest Guy. The other one I used was Passion 1, Impact. You don't want to do a knockout with something like a thin font where you have a lot of spaces between everything. They're not going to turn out good. All right, perfect. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your week. And I believe next week I'll definitely have one training. That will probably be Tuesday, and I think that's going to be a YouTube member special. So anyone that's an All-Star member, check for that next week. I think I'm going to have one Tuesday, and then I'll have Tuesday night, and then I'll have another free one next week too. So the All-Star will do a little bit more. It'll be a little longer, make a couple more designs, and then next, the free one will kind of do more of like an overview like this. All right, guys. Well, have a great day, and thank you for coming.